So, yeah, this could be quite an embarrassing experience, but you know, in a way, it could be cathartic as well to talk about embarrassing bands that I listen to. And when I went to research it, one band came out more than others, so I better face up to it, I suppose. And I've worked in music radio for most of my working life, and my favourite job in the career that I had in music radio so far was in TXFM, which was well, those people that I paid to come in and clap, they showed up, unlike our listeners. An alternative. I'm joking, of course. I'm joking. All the listeners are actually here. So on this alternative music station, I presented a drive time show each day, and it was great. And I love music, and I'd rather live in a world without films or television or goat's cheese than a world without music. Maybe not the goat's cheese. And it's been a big part of my life since I was born. Music, not goat's cheese. But just like the jokes just get worse. Just like there's no escaping the baffling haircuts of your past, and I've had quite a few. There's no escaping the bands that you were once into and the records that you once bought. And I guess I like to think that I have good taste in music, as most people do, because it's not like you've ever met someone who says, oh yeah, I really crap taste in music, by the way. But it is very subjective, and there's no accounting for personal taste. And my granny used to buy me and my brother records at Christmas, one record each every December. So it was quite a slow way to build up a collection. And I'd like you to picture her walking around the Virgin Megastore on Aston Quay, wondering if Megadeth's Peace sells, but who's buying is worth the effort. But in reality, my dad would go out and buy them, and they'd be from Gran. But it was great. It was really cool. She'd sort them out. Well, I think she did. And then I began buying my own records, and that's when it all went wrong. And I hate the question, which was asked earlier, what was the first record you ever bought with your own money? I'd much rather, what was the second record you ever bought? Because in my case, the second record was Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. And I can stand over that decision. I still think it's a good record. Someone's laughing. I think it's a good record. And some of the songs are quite good. But the first album I bought, with my own money, released within a few months of Appetite for Destruction, which is really baffling when you think of what I was at, was Push by Bros. There it is. You know, when I was Googling imaging, when I Google imaged, I don't know what the verb is, the picture for that album, it actually was the first time I'd seen it in 30 years. No, less, obviously, 20 years. And I paused for a minute and went, Jesus Christ, there's that album. I honestly haven't seen it since that long. Anyway, why? How did this happen? What was I thinking? Who were Bros? Or more importantly, why were Bros? So to give you some context, Bros were a kind of a teen boy band of sorts, formed in 1986. There was two twin brothers, Matt and Luke Goss, and an unfortunate non-sibling called Craig Logan. They had three big hits from their debut album, Push. Three, yeah, they had, I didn't write this down, but they had I Owe You Nothing, When Will I Be Famous, which was the second single, and then Drop the Boy. And the album was released in March 1988. And
Spot Craig.
yeah, so Craig is the guy in the background, clearly going, lads, can I write a song or sing or can I do anything? And they're like, no, mate, no. Their style, which I'll come to in a minute, they kind of look like the two boys, Matt and Luke, kind of look like those hairless cats, you know, those trendy hairless cats with the weird eyes. But anyway, some interesting Bros facts. They had 6 million fans worldwide in a fan club. This is pre-internet, called the Bros Front, which sounds militaristic and revolutionary, and you'd think they wear berets and smoke gitan, but no, they were just pimply teenagers. They were the only group to have been in every issue of Smash Hits. I love this fact. From 1988 to 1990. I just think that's class. Oh, hang on. Anyway, longer than that. Don't mind the years. And then they're the youngest group in history to play Wembley. And they did 19 consecutive nights at Wembley. Like, people lose their shit when Robbie Williams does 2 nights in his local. Then again, he is Robbie Williams. Thanks for the laugh, Garrett. You can take that. So, in short, they became a huge music phenomenon, a pop music phenomenon, mostly in the UK, Ireland, and Australia. And the buzz lasted for about, well, 3 years, at which point they disappeared. And they were undoubtedly a manufactured pop band. And their look was particularly studied, but quite simple. Hopefully you can see that properly. So what you've got going on, kind of black leather jackets, all right, white T-shirts, blue jeans, shoes that were kind of like a cross between a brogue and a crepe, short hair slicked back at the top, and moodiness. And it's almost like a James Dean 1950s American diner thing going on, which had very wide appeal, probably still does. And in the late 80s in particular, there was a revival and an obsession with this era. Do you remember the Levi's TV ads and the music that they used? Films like Back to the Future. So they were kind of cashing in on something there. And if you think about it really, in the 80s, the culture, the style of the 60s was quite obsessed with. In the 90s, the style of the 70s became de rigueur. In the noughties, it was going a little bit back towards the 80s, and now it's definitely gone back to the 80s. It seems to be that cycle. So if it seems like I'm making excuses for my fandom of Bros, then I definitely am. But what about me in 1988? Never mind those guys. Would you like to see me in 1988? Well, there is no photo of me in 1988, so there's a picture of me photoshopped next to the Edge. My good pal, the Edge. Not actually my good pal, but, well, we could be friends. I interviewed him once, and we got on really well, and I texted him a few times a day ever since. And number blocked, blah, blah, guards on the phone, whatever. He's such a kidder. But in 1988, I was in my first year in secondary school. I was young and impressionable, and for some reason I was taken in by the contrived and manufactured image of Bros. I was. Now, granted, I was an avid reader of smash hits. Don't worry, after my intercert, some of you might remember that, I switched to the NME. But Smash Hits, believe it or not, was quite a witty and well put together magazine. It really was. I am making excuses again. In my research for this, I discovered that among the people who were on the front of Smash Hits, Robert Smith from The Cure, the Jesus and Mary Chain, Morrissey, and David Bowie. So, yeah, maybe it was cool. Anyway, I liked Bros. I thought they were very cool, and Push was the first album I ever bought with my own money. The sad thing was my attempts to emulate their style. So I'll remind you of their style. I don't have a picture of me trying to emulate their style. Thank God. So if you think about 1988 in Ireland, particularly Newbridge, where I grew up, there was no money. There was very little clothing. So we didn't have black leather jackets. We didn't, certainly not for a 13-year-old lad. I had a black duffel coat, handed down from several generations. My great-grandfather, my great-grandfather who fought in the Boer War, I believe it belonged to him. He did actually fight in the Boer War. There were no cool jeans either in Newbridge in 1988. I had a pair of pale blue tracksuit bottoms from Penny's. So I had that, the duffel coat. You wouldn't have worn a white T-shirt back then, or any T-shirt in Ireland in 1988, because it rained for the whole year, and temperatures didn't rise above 11 degrees. So I had my school jumper. So the school jumper, tracky bottoms, duffel coat, shit hair, and then the shoes. The shoes were the best, right? So if you remember, like, I just thought they were the coolest shoes ever known to man. So I had, do you remember, you had those grey shoes, thin at the end, with side lacing. Yeah. In Newbridge in 1988, you had grey shoes, you had white socks, obviously, flecky trousers, and then you had grey shoes with the side lacing, or black patent slip-ons. That is true. Anyway, they came from Dunn's, obviously, Dunn's. But I had the name, so I didn't look like them, but I had the name and the logo on my copybooks, and the pictures on the bedroom door, all that kind of stuff. They did have a logo, like any good band, they had a logo. That was it. That was their logo. So I'd sketched that out on the copybook when I should have been, you know, conjugating verbs. So my Bros phase lasted shorter than the band themselves, which was pretty short. And then it got quite interesting for me when I look back and review it. Some interesting phases followed very quickly, and with brief moments of intensity. Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard. I didn't go too much into hair metal. I couldn't. Iron Maiden for some reason, and the new wave of British heavy metal, and Metallica and Megadeth. Where I did come up trumps with the fashion in relation to Iron Maiden was any good Iron Maiden fan or heavy metal fan will have back patches or side patches. Now, these are patches that you sew onto your jacket, leather jacket or denim jacket, and you're showing off your allegiance to a band, right? This is true. Surely you know about this, right? So myself and my friend Gilly, we were 13, 14. We'd go to the Curragh Market and we'd buy back patches. There's a lad sold back patches, Iron Maiden, all the rest of it. And I'll never forget, Gilly's mother wouldn't sew them. We couldn't sew. Gilly's mother wouldn't sew them onto his jacket, you know, because it's all like, you know, blood and guts and all this. And my mother did. And I thought, the owl one, she's not so bad. She's not so bad. I didn't call her the owl one to her face. So anyway, so I got into, you know, as I went into 5th year and 6th year, into all cool bands, you know, the Manchester scene, Stone Roses, Happy Mondays, and the Pixies and Joy Division and Nirvana followed. And then, as I went to college and I entered my 20s, my taste broadened and I was into all sorts of music, you know, electronic dance music and everything else. And I often wonder, well, was I subconsciously moving as far away from Bros as I possibly could and hoping they'd never catch up with me? And I ended up working in radio and in alternative music radio, where people seem to trust my judgment, and as strange as that may seem, especially in light of that. And then I kind of, you know, I suppose I had alternative music credentials, which is a bit pretentious and meaningless, but it is where I ended up. But now you know something from which I can never escape, that the first album I ever bought with my own money was Bros. So maybe tonight was a bit of regression therapy to come to terms with that. Does it matter? Of course it doesn't. Henry Rollins put it best when he said, one of the nice things about a favourite pop song is that it's an unconditional truce on judgment and musical snobbery. You like the song because you just do, and there need not be any further criticism. And yes, I'm setting up a Bros tribute band. I'll be Craig. I just need a couple of blonde twins. Thank you very much. Here you go.